Howdy hobby farmers, I'm Bevan Cohen from Small House Farm, and today I'm going to show you how to get a jump start on your garden by starting some of your seeds indoors. Now here at Small House Farm, we are a small scale operation, so the tips and tricks I'm going to show you today, you can apply to your growing scenario no matter how big or how small your farm is. You can certainly buy your plant starts from your local greenhouse or your farmer's market. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But one of the benefits of starting your own seeds at home is the selection. When you go to your greenhouse or farmer's market to buy your plant starts, you are limited by what they have available for sale. You'll get some beefsteak tomatoes, I'm sure some wonderful peppers, but think of the variety available to you in your seed catalogs. Hundreds of different selections to choose from, all these wonderful, beautiful things. They're all yours when you start your own seeds at home. There are so many wonderful places that we can choose to get our seeds from. Obviously online, if we Google, we can find a number of different seed companies. Flipping through seed catalogs in the wintertime is one of my favorite activities. Gives us a lot of time to dream, plan out our gardens. We can visit our local garden centers, most certainly. I'm going to suggest a couple of options to you that are just near and dear to my heart. Number one, find a local seed company. Small scale local producers right in your area that are making seeds. These are usually mom and pop shops, very small operations, but they are producing localized seed, and that's going to perform the best in your gardens. If you have a seed library in your community, go and check it out. These seed libraries are just absolutely wonderful resources. Not only can you get your hands on some great seeds, but also you get to meet folks in your community that are also growing stuff. We can share our ideas, we can learn from each other. The seed library is a hub for so many wonderful things. So get online, find your local seed library, a great resource for some local seeds. Before we even gather our equipment, we have to know when we want to plant our seeds. And to do this, we have to understand our last frost date. Right? So once you understand the last frost date for your particular growing area, then we just have to calculate back, right? Doing a little bit of subtraction. Some of our long season crops, things like peppers, tomatoes, and eggplants, we're going to want to start those the earliest. And I'm talking 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. So again, take that last frost date, subtract 6 to 8 weeks on the calendar, and that's when you want to start planting your tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and those sorts of things. Same thing for everything else as we move along. When we're talking about our flowers and our greens and other fruits and vegetables, some of them are going to need to be 2 to 4 weeks before your last frost date. Some right around your last frost date. So look at the back of your seed packets. Look online for some information. See when those need to be planted, and then just calculate based on the last frost date in your growing area. Once we've determined our proper planting dates, the next thing we got to do, gather our supplies. Of course, we're going to need our seeds. And we're going to need some sort of container to plant our seeds in. And there's a lot of options here, folks. Some folks like to use small little pots like this, and that works great. Some folks like to reuse cups like this. You see a lot of people using red Solo cups. It's very popular right now. Nothing wrong with that at all. Reuse what you got at home. That's the best way to do it, right? So you can use that. I like to use these seed starting trays. These are really, really nice. They've got these individual cells, as you can see here. You can load up a bunch. I could get a lot of seeds started right here. And they come with this great humidity dome. Creates a little mini greenhouse right here. Once we get our seeds started, this is going to create the perfect environment to get our seeds going. Now, when we're working with warm weather crops like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, again, remember these are the ones that we're planting the earliest, 6 to 8 weeks before our last frost date. We need to get some heat onto these seeds. They're going to germinate best at temperatures 75 degrees Fahrenheit and higher. To achieve these temperatures, we're going to need a heat mat of some sort. You can certainly purchase a commercial heat mat, just like the one you see here. If you don't have that, that's okay. You could use an old-fashioned heating pad if you have one of those. You could put your seeds on a radiator, another heat source in your home, on top of your refrigerator. Generates quite a bit of heat, certainly enough heat to get your seeds sprouted. Use what you've got, most certainly. For us here at Small House, the heat mat works great. It's just the most convenient option for us, but whatever you have available to you, that's what you're going to want to do. The next thing we need to consider is our soil, right? What kind of medium do we want to use to plant our seeds in? And there's a lot of different options here. I like to purchase a pre-made seed starting mix. That's just easiest for me. That's what I want to do. If you're mixing your own seed starting mix at home, that's great. But we want to make sure that we're using something nice and light and a little bit airy. And this way those little baby sprouts can break free. We don't want really heavy, clumpy soil. If you don't have a humidity dome like this one, no worries at all. You can actually use some plastic film wrap right over top of the pots to cover it up. It's going to create that same greenhouse effect. It's going to work just the same. And that's probably something you already have at home. You don't need to go and purchase it. Another thing that you're going to want to consider is your water source. How are you going to water your seedlings? And there's a lot of different options here. I find the easiest, one of these pump sprayers, just like this. Now, this is an investment that you're going to have to go and purchase, but definitely worth the cost. Another side tip is if you're able to, once your plants get established, you're going to want to take this dome off. Too much heat and moisture in there is not going to be good for the plants. It's going to encourage fungal growth and things. We don't want that. We need airflow. Once your plants are growing, we need that airflow. It's very important for them. And if we can, we want to water from underneath, not from above. Water from underneath. This is going to encourage stronger roots. The roots are going to grow deeper down into the pots to find that water. If we just continue to water from the top, we're going to have very shallow root growth. We're going to have weaker plants. We also need to consider how we're going to label our plants. Labeling is very important. Baby tomato plants all look the same to me, so I need to label them to make sure I know which variety is which for when I put them out into the garden later. There's a lot of options here for plant labels. You can certainly purchase plant labels that are designed specifically for this purpose, but why purchase what you already have at home? I like to use old popsicle sticks. These are wonderful for labels. Take it with a Sharpie marker, permanent marker, write right on these. This is going to work really well. Or take an old window blind. Here's the tip for you folks. Take an old window blind, cut it into strips like this. Repurpose these old broken window blinds. These make wonderful plant labels. Again, permanent marker, we can write right on them, stick them right into our plants. And this is a great way to repurpose something from around the house that otherwise would be considered trash, can become a gardener's treasure. We're also going to want to consider what kind of lighting we're going to use for our seeds here. There's certainly some very high-end, expensive grow light options out there, and if you've got that in your budget, go ahead and do it. But for a small-scale scenario like this, that's not an investment that I'm willing to make. You know what, though? Your typical shop light is going to be all that we need. And you could buy bulbs for that. They have the exact same spectrum of lighting as the good old sunshine. So that's what we're going to want to get. Get those grow lights, set them up over your seedlings here. Now, you're going to want to keep your lights about 2 to 3 inches above the soil. And as the plants grow, you'll raise your lights up to keep them about 2 to 3 inches above the plants. That's to make sure that they're going to get all the light that they need to grow a nice sturdy stem. We don't want thin, leggy, weak plants. If you don't have grow lights and you don't want to invest in grow lights, that's perfectly fine too. You got a nice southern window that's getting good sunlight, put your plants over in that southern window, get that sunlight on there, and that's probably all you're going to need to get your little baby plants going. All right, well, let's go ahead and get planting. We're going to plant some eggplant and pepper seeds, I think, to get started. These, again, like we talked about, require a longer season, so we want to get them started right away. The first thing that I'm going to do is pre-moisten my seed starting mix. This coconut coir is quite dry, and by moistening it, getting it wet before we work with it, it's just going to make it a lot easier to work with. Then we're going to want to load up our planting cells here. What I like to do is take another planting cell that's of the same size and use it to just tamp this down. Really pack that soil in there tight. It's very important that we have good seed to soil contact. There we go. Once we have that, we're going to take a tool known as a dibble, if you got one. I just use an old pencil or pen, something like this. And we're going to make little holes in the cells where we're going to drop our little seeds in. As far as planting depth goes, what we want to consider is the size of the seed that we're planting. We want our seed to be planted at a depth at approximately 1.5 times the size of the width of the seed. 1.5 times the size of the width of the seed. So when we're dealing with small seeds like peppers and eggplants, that's not very deep at all. One in each hole. Now, if you're working with older seeds and you're not sure that they're all going to germinate, you can hedge your bets by putting a few extra seeds in there, most certainly. But again, if they all decide to grow, you're going to have to thin them out. All right, once we get our seeds in, we're going to want to cover them up. Just going to use my finger. We're going to want to water them now with a fine mist, right? If you've got one of these pump sprayers like we talked about, you're going to want to set it to a nice fine mist. We don't want to just blast these things with a heavy blast of water. We're going to knock the seeds right out of the container. So a nice fine mist. Get them good and moist. Put your dome over top of it. Set it on your heat mat. Put it under your light. And then we're just going to play the waiting game. Now, depending upon the species of what we're growing here, the different seeds, it's going to take a certain amount of time before they germinate. Things like peppers could take up to 14 days sometimes before they germinate. That's 2 weeks. That's a long time to wait. So we have to be patient. We got to take our time and wait and see what Mother Nature's going to gift us. But in the meantime, we got to make sure that we keep these things moist, right? Once your trays are mostly sprouted, we're going to want to prop that dome up, right? Get some airflow in there for those plants. We don't want to stifle them in all that humidity. Once your last frost date has passed and everything starts to warm up again and you've reached the soil temperatures that you need for those particular plants, it's time to transplant these little babies out into your garden.